we'll get to the bet here in a second. But first, we got to get the back end of the linebacker group. Nick Bolton of Missouri, your number 5 linebacker in terms of your rankings, Josh.
Yeah, a little bit undersized, but really athletic. He flows sideline to sideline, high volume tackler. Missouri didn't ask him to do a lot in their scheme, and I think that's kind of the concern with him as he makes the transition to the NFL. I think he's an option for pretty much any team in round 2 that does not get their guy in round 1. So, we'll talk about the teams that are in the mix for the position in the first round. But I think Nick Bolton is kind of a good, a good piece to get on day 2 if you decide to go a different route and target different positions on day 1.
Okay. Your number 2. Sorry, Diva and I discovered a piece of crazy information that we'll get to in a second. But Zaven Collins, your number 4 linebacker out of Tulsa.
Yeah, he's got great size. He's a little bit more of a traditional linebacker in the sense that he's going to be able to fit run gaps. He's not as good in coverage as some of these other guys that we'll discuss shortly. But again, just a really athletic player. He's strong. He's going to be able to fit a need for some of these teams in the back half of the first round, which is kind of where I project them: late round 1, early round 2. Look at the Bills, the Packers, and possibly the Jets early in round 2 as possible fits for Jamin Collins.
Okay. And Zaven Collins. Yeah. No, Josh, you're allowed to make a tiny slip up in terms of your pronunciation, especially on this show. Nobody's going to notice if you say Jamin Collins instead of Zaven Collins when I'm out here mangling every 5th name. With these linebackers, are these guys in your top 5? And we're talking traditional linebackers, right? Because I think we've gotten fairly good at being able to put, open up the edge bucket, and we're going to put the edge guys in the edge bucket. Off-ball linebackers stay over here. I wish the NFL would do this with franchise tags, and then defensive linemen stay over here. But sometimes you get a little. There's a bit of gray area, some Venn diagram action going on there, right? I mean, it's not all cut and dry. Are there any? Are some of these linebackers better pass rushers, et cetera? Does anybody stand out to you in that regard?
The number 1 on this list, Micah Parsons, is probably the most skilled pass rusher of the group, and then the guy number 2 on the list, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, is going to be the best in coverage. And then number 3 kind of has the best all around view of the position. So number 3 right there on the screen is Kentucky's Jamin Davis, a guy that has gotten a lot of attention as we've gone through this process. I mean, when he first decided to enter this draft class, I was thinking he was probably like a 5th round pick before I was able to get back around and watch how he developed over the course of the season. And there were some people who had similar thoughts at the time. But as you work later into his season, you start seeing games against Florida, and Georgia, some of these other teams in the SEC, and you start seeing some of the development. I mean, this was a first-year starter. He's going to be 22 at the start of the draft. So, a guy that is still just coming into his own. He's got a lot of football left to learn, but capable of flying sideline to sideline and making plays. He's progressed on his ability to get off blocks. He's fantastic in coverage. I mean, he's probably the only guy that was able to cover Kyle Pitts at the linebacker position this past year. So really talented player. He loves the game of football. I think I've told it on this podcast in the past, but a guy that missed only 1 meeting during his time at Kentucky, and that's because he got the wrong time. He missed the text that said that the meeting time had changed.
Yeah, that's right. You did tell that story out here.
Yeah, and then another story. So Kentucky had their pro day. Obviously, his family was scheduled to come into town and visit him, and he said, "That's great, but come after pro day because I want all of the focus to be on going out there and competing the best that I can. I don't want the additional stress of having to host and all that comes with it right now." So a guy that's very focused on his future, very coachable, and still has a lot to learn at the position. I think he's only going to continue to get better.
All right, so we're gonna talk a bit for just a second about this while I try and look up some odds as well, because we have here, you can see up here from William Hill. If you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/PickSix, and you can see us as we go through the odds. Jamin Davis is I can't pronounce anybody's name. Jamin Davis is 10-1 to be the first linebacker taken. I am trying like heck to find the another place where he is listed on I think I might have it on DraftKings, because on my local site he is 65-1. He is also 10-1 on DraftKings. There's nothing, I can't find anything else, but we know he's 10-1 on William Hill, 10-1 on DraftKings. So if you have a local site or wherever you bet, legally or locally or wherever else you do it, if you're listening to this podcast, go look for Davis, first linebacker drafted, and see what he is, because 65-1, now I got to put 2 pizza money on it. I got to put maybe 3 pizza money, Josh. Do you think there's a chance that this guy is the first one drafted? Because when I look at Pete Prisco's mock draft, he has of these guys who are up here, he has Micah Parsons going 9. I know that Pete feels, and I don't know that he's written this, but I know this is how he feels, that it's possible Parsons could slip. His next linebacker is Zaven Collins, who he has going to the Cardinals at 16. And then he has Davis going to the Washington football team at 19. At 65-1, I got to hammer this, Josh. I what am I missing here?
I mean, we discussed it. I think it's good value.
I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. Just that 65-1 is
again great value. I mean, you're taking out a lottery ticket on a potentially big win. Jamin Davis, I know there's some teams that value him as their second best linebacker in this class. Obviously, don't talk to all 32 teams, but there may be teams that have him rated higher. I don't know. But as we continue to try to parse through, what's going on with Micah Parsons, because like Pete, I have heard a little bit that he might fall down the board, even into the 20s. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's certainly possible. So if you're looking for a flyer to take, during draft weekend, that's not a bad value, because Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a little bit more specialized. He's not going to fit everybody in the sense that, again, he's better suited in coverage. So if you're looking for a more traditional linebacker, which is not as common as it was, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, but if you're looking more for a traditional lineman, then, Jamin Davis and Zaven Collins are probably more up your alley. But as we get to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, like I said,
I was just
no, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to point out that I was texting with Pete Prisco about it too. 2 more things just about Davis and why I would take that bet. I'm not taking it at 10-1. Don't get me wrong, but at 65-1, I'm definitely getting involved in it. Daniel Jeremiah, who I respect as an analyst for NFL media, has had him in his April 6th mock, the last one, going 26 to the Browns, and noted he's quote, "I've been president of the Davis fan club for a while now, but to say he destroyed his pro day would be an understatement. It matches what I saw on tape, and he feels a need for Cleveland." I would guess, just a guess, that DJ moves him a little bit higher in his next mock draft if you've got him ranked as your 3rd linebacker. Pete Prisco's hearing good things about him moving up to 19. And I'm not saying he's going to go in the top 10 or anything crazy like that, but it does feel like this is a guy whose draft stock is rising as we get closer to the draft. And I think when you look at the teams involved up there, Pete just called him a Anthony Barr clone, which I thought was really interesting. I'm not saying Philly is taking him at 12. The Chargers, it wouldn't be crazy for the Chargers to take another linebacker at 13. That's really the weak spot of their defense. I think they'll go offensive line, but the Vikings at 14, I mean, they have Anthony Barr. Patriots at 15 are always involved in a possible, defensive wild card. The Cardinals have taken these versatile linebacker types before. The Raiders need defensive help. Dolphins, Washington, Chicago probably no, and the Colts have Darius Leonard. My point being is that once you get to 12, there are a lot of teams that could just surprise you, I think, in this draft with what direction they go on defense. And that makes a guy at 65-1 who's being buzzed about as we lead up to this process a pretty good value. Anywho, on to your number. No, go ahead, sir.
Before we move on, I'll talk a little bit about that pro day, because the Cowboys did have Mike McCarthy and they did have Dan Quinn in attendance. Obviously, 2 very important pieces to that Cowboys decision-making process. I don't think he's a fit at number 10, but possibly in a trade down scenario. If they were to move back, maybe he's, an option at that point. Because he's not going to be there for their pick in the second round. So
that's a great call, because remember, this is a team that has Sean Lee, who's gone now. Jalen Smith, they signed to that extension. I'm not sure they feel great about it. And then Leighton Vander Esch, who's been dealt with major neck injuries. That's a team that's willing to invest in that position early on in the draft, and they think it matters for their defense. So I don't think that's crazy at all.
Yeah, and I think Washington is a really intriguing fit as well, because you have added to that secondary this offseason. You already had one of the best defensive lines in football. So to add a guy like Jamin Davis there at 19, I think, could be a really, really interesting fit. So I initially said the Giants, the Titans, the Saints, and the Browns were teams that could possibly be interested in the back half of the first round. But I think it's probably trending in the direction where he's going to go higher than what maybe people think. So I'm looking at possibly Washington that could take him off the board.
And Washington at 19, there ain't no guarantee that Micah Parsons could fall past that.
Yeah.
Owusu could fall past that. Ojulari could fall past that. Zaven Collins could fall past that. At 60, I'm not saying you take it at 10-1. I don't hate it at 10-1. But at 65-1, you better believe I'm taking it. I mean, that's we're looking at basically, look at these odds on the screen. Like Baron Browning, who you better believe I haven't heard of, is he's going to be the first linebacker coming off the board. So check around your books and see if you got it. I just bought another pizza's worth of Jamin Davis on as the first linebacker off the board. I will buy his jersey if he's the first guy taken. All right, Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame, your number 2 linebacker.
Yeah, just to go over it quickly again, great in coverage. He's a little bit undersized, so may not be a fit for everybody if you're looking strictly for run fits and stuff like that. But if you're looking for a guy that can be a complementary piece occasionally as a pass rusher, he certainly brings that to the table. But coverage is his sweet spot. I mean, that's what he does well. And as we look at these teams in the NFL, versatility is everything. So it's good to have, especially as you're looking at, like the Vic Fangio style, where you're looking to use a big nickel and, some guys like that the Rams have done. The Chargers will probably do this coming year. The Browns do it. There's a number of teams that are kind of employing that kind of a scheme where you have to think that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a very intriguing fit in the first round, because among that type of skill set and that position group, he's kind of a unicorn in the way that he plays it. I mean, he is so fast and physical and aggressive, everything that you look for at the position. So teams are going to fall in love with him, and he's going to fill a very specialized need for a team that is going to utilize that skill set.
All right. And finally, of course, your number 1 linebacker, minus 425 to be the first. This guy's probably going to rip my Davis future apart. Just because of how much better he's considered than all other linebackers on the board. Again, minus 425 is a crazy number for a single position in a draft like this. I mean, Jamar Chase is minus 700 at this point to be the first wide receiver. And I don't know. I just don't ever feel good about the only one I'd feel good about doing that with, the only position on this entire draft that I feel good about laying the lumber on a massive number in terms of the heavy favorite. It ain't even Penei Sewell. It's Trevor Lawrence. That's the only guy I would consider doing it for. I wouldn't even do it for Zach Wilson, second overall. There's only one. I know Wilson's going second, but Lawrence is the only guy. What's that? Do you think Fields second? Is that what you're saying?
No, Kyle Pitts.
Oh, Kyle Pitts first tight end.
Yeah.
That might be a bigger number than Lawrence, honestly.
Probably, yeah, because I think I
haven't even seen that up. I didn't even consider that. I don't think
why.
I don't think they have it on the board. Like Debo, I don't want to make you search around, but if you see, I'll look on there. There's first all right. How about this? Kyle Pitts is minus 121 to be the first non-quarterback selected. Well, I actually kind of like that. That's not terrible.
It goes back to the conversation we had before the podcast. It just kind of depends what Atlanta does. Atlanta is Atlanta is holding the ticket for a lot of people in their betting futures during the draft.
They are.
Because that's a possible quarterback destination, whether it's them or a trade up situation. Otherwise, you're looking at probably Kyle Pitts. But a trade would send a massive shockwaves throughout the draft and really affect some of these other tickets. So
and if they trade on the clock, you can't, like if they make the trade on Thursday morning, you can fly onto your book and get out of some of the action you got by taking some plus money the other way and hedge out a little bit. If Atlanta trades on the clock, that's gonna be an expensive evening for if it's Mac Jones 3 into an Atlanta trade out with somebody for a quarterback, I'm hopping in my car and driving to California or just to the airport and flying to Costa Rica. That's how expensive it's going to be. Anywho, Micah Parsons, number one linebacker on your board. Why do we like him?
Just his athleticism. He's fairly polished at the position. I think he offers you a little bit of edge rush potential as well. But a guy that literally covers every blade of grass. I mean, he flies around the football field. Capable of dropping into coverage. His performance at his pro day was off the charts, which, as we've discussed in the past, is not uncommon for those Penn State athletes. But I mean, he checks all the boxes. Obviously, some of the off-field concerns is, what could, precipitate his fall. But that's really the only thing. So as you're looking for possible fits in the first round, I think the Patriots, the Raiders, the Dolphins, possibly even the Giants and the Eagles, they're in the top 12. Although Eagles fans will be quick to tell you they're not going to take a linebacker that early. And I understand where they're coming from, but it is a position of need. So, I mean, he's got a very wide range of options. I mean, those are teams in the teens. And then if he truly does make it into the 20s, you've got a whole new list of teams.
Yeah, it is. It will be interesting to see how Parsons goes. Everybody sort of pencils him at 9 to Denver. And that's fine. Yeah. Denver loves their defensive players. George Patton has, been a part of a Minnesota front office, has drafted a lot of defensive players, but I think it might be folly to just assume he's going to go in the top 10. If I were betting on Parsons, first of all, obviously I'm taking that Davis 65-1 bet. But if I'm betting on something Parsons related, I'm taking his over, and it was 10.5. It's moved to 11.5 and now 12.5 in certain spots. So that's what I would be looking for in terms of the Parsons action. All right.